Drain a crumb life, drain a crumb
Thanks, Sean, for coming on the show. I already said that, but yeah, let's just. I saw that you were a cultivator on, and I was like, man, that's freaking crazy. Like that picture you had on your profile, I was like, dang, that's a lot of weed. And so I was like, oh, see, this guy will talk to me. So here we are, man. Let everyone know what you do and stuff, and we'll just have a little chat.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I started in the cannabis industry many years ago. I guess the Colorado regulated industry. I got involved in that in 2009. Have cultivated quite a bit of cannabis in the past decade plus, um, and most recently took a position as the North American sales director for a company that makes mobile testing devices. So it's a device that you can put cannabis into that'll read out total THC, CBD, CBG, and et cetera, which is Gemacert, which is what kind of more of my day-to-day job is. And then I'm also still involved in the cannabis industry, from cultivation and dispensaries and training staff. And I teach a college course online in the state of Missouri. And I live in Denver, Colorado, so I'm kind of in the mix of it in many different ways. Have bred and made seeds over the years, have cultivated cannabis, design facilities, staff facilities, and that's kind of the backbone of all of it. That picture is from a facility that I used to be involved with.
Man, you're deep into that stuff, huh?
Yeah,
That's like your
very
whole
much so.
life, dude. That's
Yeah,
crazy. Man, just to think about that, like 10 years ago, you'd be on the Fed freaking list. They'd be raiding your house. You
correct.
know, they'd be, you'd be in prison for like 50 years or 100 years for that. What the heck, dude? Like, what happened? Like, as soon as they flipped and made it legal, you just went right into it, or how did
No,
that
I mean,
happen for you?
prior to moving to Colorado in, what was that, 2007, I lived in Southern California.
Mhm.
And prior to it being a legal market in Colorado, there were many years doing things in the old market, or the old world. I spent 2004, spent some time in Amsterdam, and it had been involved in it for many years. But when I left Southern California and moved to Colorado, it was a little bit more accepted in some of the mountain towns. There was a medical program that you could get into. So I was a medical caregiver and grew cannabis for people. And then when it did flip and they started giving out licenses and all that stuff, that's when I got into it in 2009. So that's when the medical licenses came out. You could actually have a regulated medical dispensary. But I mean, I've been involved with the plant in some realm, I mean, for a very long time, which I think most people nowadays think it's a little different. Like, you want to get into the cannabis industry, so you learn about cannabis.
Mhm.
Many of those years prior to 2009, 2007, there were a lot of us that were involved in cannabis, but as you said, it was a little bit
Mm,
more taboo and illicit than it is now, for sure.
mhm. So, did you just is growing like how did you learn how to grow basically? Did you have to take did you find someone that was like really good at it and just taught you? Because you seem like you know really well how to grow weed.
uh,
Just
yeah,
by
I mean,
listening to you talk, like
yeah, it's like a lot of other skills. I mean, it definitely takes a lot of trial and
that's what I
error.
mean. Like it's not you just stick a seed in the ground and watch it grow.
No, no. Well, I mean, if you want something that's of
Weak.
higher potency or higher quality or et cetera,
Yeah.
it definitely takes a little bit more to do than that. So, I mean, I guess the first thing is kind of knowing what's good and bad cannabis. I think there's a lot of people out there that enjoy cannabis in some realm, and they know what they like and what they don't like, and what looks good and
Mhm.
what doesn't look good. When I spent some time in Amsterdam, it was more about learning about breeding and how to select different plants. And that was further along in my journey, so to speak. I mean, it started with, some people that I knew had some idea of what they were doing. I mean, back then, compared to what I do now, it's vastly different. But having some plants outside, having some plants inside, having a little closet or a little tent, so to speak. And it took a lot of shitty harvests and low quality stuff to start to learn how to get through it. It's kind of like painting or anything else.
That's pretty cool.
That you can get better at it. And then over the years, things got better and technology changes. And then, here in America, there are a lot of people that are breeding and taking, different things to make, the so-called Granny Smith apple, or trying to make the yellow banana and all of that stuff. And I think that's a different journey that you kind of get into once you're growing a lot of cannabis and growing high quality cannabis. You're like, well, the trait from this one is really nice and the trait from that one is really nice. And then how do you find a male, which nobody really wants around, because everything that everybody's smoking and using all comes from a female plant. But when you get into having, we need a male so we can pollinate females. And nowadays it's different. There's a bunch of different ways that you can work a female plant, which is, some people call it stress, some people don't. There's additives you can give to it, and it'll make its own seed without a male. But those aren't necessarily as, I would say, stable as a true male and female pollinating together like they would in nature. That gives you a seed that could be a male or a female, but it also gives you a seed that has a little bit more vitality and resistance and stamina and growth and all of that stuff with it. And I mean, that's kind of what's led me to what I do now with Gemacert and these testing devices, is that there's a lot of people that are growing cannabis. And when I started, I wasn't able to test anything. So I didn't know that this was 24% THC, and I didn't know that this was 13% CBD. A lot of it went on, bag appeal and whether or not you felt like it got you super high or not high enough, or it was daytime or nighttime, or and also obviously if other people enjoy it and like it, then it's a different type of situation. But nowadays we have a bunch of different technology. There's regulated labs, which I've been involved with those in 2014 and 2015, and then we have devices now where you can take the bud that you grow at your house, put it in the device, and it'll tell you on your phone, what that percentage is, which is crazy.
Is that an expensive device?
So the two devices that we have, one is more geared towards home cultivation, which is called the GC Lite. That one comes right now is $3,500. It'll go up at the first of the year. And then we also have one called the GC Pro, and that one does, it has CBG, which is a different conversation about cannabinoids and how those are developed within the plant. It also does extracts. It does some other things with it. And that one right now is $6,000, but at the first of the year, it'll go up to $7,500.
So it's basically like you can get some dirt weed, put it in this machine. What does the machine look like? Is it like is it like big, or is it small, or is it?
I would say it kind of looks like it's about the size of like an old coffee pot maker from like the 1990s, like those desktops. And you put the bud into a little canister. The canister slides into it. The technology that's used is called near infrared spectroscopy. So that works on light reflection. And we also have some imaging that goes on. And then there's 24 different tests that happen within the device. Those get averaged and it spits it out to it. And I mean, to anybody listening that doesn't know about testing, for some of the devices that are in regulated labs, you're talking about $200,000 to $300,000.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So when you talk about, $4,000 and $7,000, it's different. Plus the cost of a test anywhere in the country, whether it's Maine, Arkansas, Missouri, Colorado, you're probably looking anywhere from $250 to $600, $700 for a test to be done in the regulated market.
So it pays for itself.
It pays for itself pretty quick. And especially with people that are, breeding or making
growing,
seeds, and
for sure. That's real important.
If you're pheno hunting and you have 100 different seeds and you want to figure out which one of those Kush cookies is the one that you want to keep, now you can test them all as you're going to try to.
So you can test the seed too?
Yes.
What?
Well, no, you can't test the seed, but when we're growing the seed out. So like if I take 100 different seeds and I germinate them all and I'm growing 100 seeds, to see which one of those seeds is going to be what would be considered the keeper pheno. Yeah, or which one's going to be the one that, you know, like when people talk about sour diesel, they're usually talking about AJ's sour diesel. AJ is a person. If you get into Soma and a bunch of his seeds, it's Soma's Kush and stuff like that. Those are considered keeper phenos. So when you get into, you know, you're trying to search all of these different seeds to find that one keeper, now our device kind of helps you navigate that with, you know, it's not just color and smell and effect.
Right. You can get the exact number.
Yeah. You have some analytical data now with this device that will show you. And I mean, it takes 3 or 4 minutes. It prints it right out.
That's super cool, dude.
There's an app on your phone that's free. So it comes up right on your phone. You can screenshot it. People talk about it.
Yeah.
You can see who has the most THC or who has the least amount of THC when you're talking about hemp, or the most CBD or the littlest amount of CBD. I mean, it's kind of like a new Pandora's box that's opened up for the cannabis industry, that now you have data, as opposed, I mean, nothing against anybody listening, but if you smoked an 18% THC and a 22% THC and didn't know, I will say that I doubt you can tell me that there's a difference in the two of them.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's cool. Like especially if you're growing and like you want to like sell it as a product, like, hey, I have the best weed. I have here's the numbers that prove it, you know, here's this other weed and this is my weed. Look at this, you know?
Right. And that's the GC Light, and what we do for like home cultivation is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people all across the country that are cultivating cannabis. Now you're able to do, you know, what I consider transparency. You can show your customers, or you can show your people, this is what it actually is, as opposed to there's, you know, unfortunately, in a taboo market like cannabis, there's a lot of people calling it something that it isn't, to sell it, or saying that it's something that it isn't. This kind of, you know, it's transparent now, so you can actually be honest about what you got and also what you're purchasing. So, you know, there's a lot of people that may want to test the weed that they have because somebody told them it was something
that too. Yeah, people could be lying. They're like, hey, this is sour diesel, and you're like, you put it in there and you're like, no, it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Man, that's cool. I think every grower should have that, and every freaking store too.
When a lot of the in the regulated market, the dispensaries, they receive product that's already tested, but the licensed facilities that cultivate, we work a lot with that. You know, say you got a 20-foot by 20-foot room, it's very normal for a certain corner of that room to be a little hot, a certain corner of that room to be a little cold. The airflow may not be the same throughout the room. So we're able to kind of help those facilities benchmark where they're getting the best potency, the worst potency. And I mean, you know, at 3 or 4 minutes for a test, we have people that are running 20 or 30 tests. You know, they go into their facility, they're checking stuff out, you know, try to figure out how to get everything consistent. And then also, you know, talking about different parts of the canopy, the top of the plant that gets the most light is always the most potent. The bottom of the plant, you know, down towards the ground that gets a little bit less light is usually the least potent. You know, how to help them out with that situation as well.
Do you smoke weed?
I don't smoke weed anymore. So I smoked a lot of weed, and now I don't use any of the smoking cannabis, the smokeless.
Okay, you still use
other stuff.
You use weed, you just don't actually burn it no more.
Correct. Yeah.
Is that prudent? Like that's the best way to do it? Like, do you think nowadays?
It depends on who the person is, what the tolerance is, what they're getting into. For myself, it was more about allergies and asthma, and just inhaling stuff wasn't the best. I think nowadays you got a bunch of different.
That makes sense.
As we would say, there's a bunch of different assimilation stuff, right? Like you can put it on the skin, you can ingest it, you can inhale it. There's other things like suppositories and different things that people can get into.
What? There's suppositories?
Yeah, they actually make a bunch of suppositories in different states across the country for people that don't want to, you know, inhale or ingest.
Damn.
And I think it also comes down to it. Like, you know, if you're talking about somebody that has cancer, you're looking at super saturating their system. So they should probably be eating it and rubbing it on the skin and probably smoking it at some point if they're able to. Then you get into people that, you know, on the weekends want to have a little bit of a buzz. So they're probably eating a small amount of edibles, but they're not going to smoke something. And then you have, you know, somebody like myself that, you know, was smoking an ounce a week or 3 or 4 grams of concentrates a week. And it's a different thing depending on what your tolerance is, much like how alcohol and other things work. You know, once you build up a tolerance, it takes a little bit more to feel that effect.
So you said something earlier that was kind of freaky to me. You said you were making seeds.
Yeah, so we did a bunch of different breeding projects. So I have some seeds that are out there. The biggest one that's most well known is a line that was crossed with an orange mints male. So we have genetics that are used in facilities in Maine, Arkansas, Missouri, here in Colorado. But we made genetics, so to speak, took a male and a female, pollinated them together, separated out the seeds, took a year of testing to grow those seeds out, make sure they were stable and going to produce what we thought. And then now we have those out that people can do it, which, I mean, if there's anybody listening that wants to acquire seeds or talk about seeds, they can find me on Instagram at Grimy Gatsby. We can talk till the cows come home about seeds anytime anybody wants.
Awesome. So how do these seeds keep continuing to evolve and change and stuff? Like, is there an endless amount of breeds of weed?
I think,
Like, you know what I mean? Like dogs, there's a certain amount of breed of dogs. Like, is there an endless amount? Like, can you just keep crossing them and doing stuff to keep getting all these crazy different weeds and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Say the 1950s, 1960s, there was a limited amount of genetics. You know, say there was 100, hypothetically speaking, and a lot of people were smoking what those genetics were. Then people started to realize that instead of killing and throwing out the males, we could save the male, take the pollen, and put it on the female. So you get into, you know, the 80s and 90s, and there's a bunch of different, you know, what I would consider legacy companies that have been doing this well before it was legal. Yeah, you know, the Cali Connection, Swerve, and those guys have done a bunch of work. Soma in Amsterdam, the Strain Hunters. There's a bunch of different ones, and they started kind of, instead of growing cannabis to grow flowers and things that could be smoked, they were growing cannabis to make genetics, and they started doing a lot of those crosses. So, you know, like when you talk about Bubba Kush, that was a Bubba plant and a Kush plant. You talk about Grape Bubba, that would have been a purple strain crossed with the Bubba Kush. So I think the answer is, yeah, there's an endless amount of crosses that are out there. You know, anybody that looks online, I would say there's, you know, as opposed to being 100 or 200 or something in the 50s and 60s, there's millions of them now.
Damn.
You know, like the seeds that I was just talking about, or the orange mints line that we made. I mean, there was 9 different genetics out of that were all different female plants crossed with an orange mints for different desired effects. Some was about taste, some was about potency, some was about terpene retention and extracts, which means that when you extract it, the same smell and taste comes out in it like it would in the flower. And I think that's something that a lot of people are continuing to expand upon. You know, they take a male and a female or some way, and they're making a bunch of seeds and then trying to sell those seeds. And the shelf life on seeds is extremely long. You know, like the stuff that I made in 2017 and 2018 is still just as good with a 90% germination rate now in 2021 as it was then. And there's a lot of people out there that are very into cannabis that, you know, kind of hoard seeds and hold on to them forever. So like I have seeds from, I don't know, when I went to Amsterdam in 2004, like I have seeds from then that I've still kept. I have seeds previous to that I still kept. So I feel like it's kind of like dogs. Like you get into like the whole, you know, double XL pit bull all the way down to the pocket kit, all the different crosses and all the different colors. And it is the same. That would be, most of that is considered line breeding, which is the same thing they do in cattle. Most of that is the same, like the same male pollinates with the female, and then you take that male and pollinate it with its daughter and etc. And that kind of strengthens it. And a lot of that stuff, I mean, there's endless amounts of information. I just had an article a couple weeks ago published at Beard Bros, which is an Instagram account that's got a ton of followers, but it talks all about, you know, how to select different stuff, how to do the breeding, how to do the testing. And that's kind of like a whole different, you know, subculture niche, so to speak, in the cannabis world.
That seems like a huge hobby. Like just doing seeds, it seems like a huge, like, I didn't even realize how big I know it was big, but damn, that's like scientific. You know what I mean? Like,
well, there's some people doing it in their garage, and then there's some people doing it in the lab for sure. It's just like microbrewing or anything else. Like you can get super focused into what it needs
For
to be by
sure.
the equipment. There's also people that are just going to take a male and plant it by 3 females out in their backyard, and by the end of the summer, that'll pollinate and give them seeds. And obviously, you know, seeded weed is kind of looked down upon. It's not as potent. People don't like it. So you know that the Sensimelia, or the non-seeded weed, is what most people are smoking. And then the seeds that come out of it, that cannabis plant that's around those seeds, isn't really used for anything, because the seed is the main thought about it.
So when I was in high school, we had the most shittiest weed. It was like, it was like the most dirt weed.
Where were you at in high school?
Check this out. I live in Corpus Christi, Texas, which is about 200 miles from the southern border.
Right. Yeah.
So I can almost guarantee you all my weed came from Mexico.
Right.
And it was, I guess it was $5 for 3 grams or whatever, like a nickel bag. Right. But the damn thing was full of stems and seeds.
Yeah.
So that's not good, right? Like, of course it wasn't good. We were like, what the hell is this? Like, it was a bunch of shake with seeds and stems. And we ended up getting out.
Yeah. One, it was probably from Mexico. 2, it was probably either thrown over the backyard. I mean, I know there's a lot of housing, and I've heard many stories about little airplanes and things that go back and forth over the fence. And I would assume that probably led to it kind of being more shake than anything else. But yeah, you are right. It's like, you know,
does that mean
that brickweed from Mexico was grown a certain way, and it comes out that way? Now, totally different. If you lived in Northern California at that point, you would have been probably smoking some of the best weed that was around.
God, man, we would get like stupid little 12-ounce cans and bend it in half and poke holes in it and smoke it behind the school. We're like, oh fuck, all right, let's go to class, and it can be all blitz and stuff. Man, those were fun times. But the weed
in St. Louis, Missouri, and it was a lot of the same thing. Like, you know, you drive 45 minutes each way and pay $60 for an eighth of some weed, just so that you were getting something that wasn't sticks and stems and etc. But everybody has to start somewhere.
Yeah. What does that mean that it's all full of seeds?
So most likely they planted like a really big crop, and within that crop somewhere there was a male or hermaphrodite or something that threw pollen. And then the wind blows that around, and it pollinates all the plants around it. And when it gets down to actual harvest time, from my understanding about the Mexico quality aspect, they didn't really care. So
I was about to say, I don't think they gave a damn. Yeah, they didn't give a damn. They just lined them up and freaking let it grow. And said, all right, bone your lip, send it over there.
And at $5 for an eighth,
hey,
it's not bad.
Hey, yeah, man, we were broke. So I mean, if one of our friends had a dime bag, we were like, hell yeah, let's smoke some weed. and like
somebody needs to go get a Dr. Pepper can so we can smoke it.
Yeah, they called me the MacGyver, dude. I'd make a bong out of anything.
Gotcha.
I would get like a milk jug and like make a little bowl out of foil on the top and make a little carb or whatever, you know. We were broke. We couldn't buy nothing. We were in high school, you know.
Yeah. You got to get through it somehow. And hey, at least it was available.
Yeah, I know, right? And now, like, I hear, because I don't smoke weed anymore. It's been a long time. It's been like a decade, and I want to, I really do, and like, but I just don't. But I had nothing against it. I think it's cool, man. I think weed is great for anxiety, for people. You know, I'm sure you know all the things it's good for. Can you tell me some of those things that are like?
For sure. So I mean, in the early stages, the reason why a lot of these states are medical first is because of that. You know, anxiety, chronic pain, PTSD, and through some scientific research, there's a lot of other things that have come out about it. There are certain strains that possess certain terpenes. So like THCV, which is a different type of cannabinoid, is really good for PTSD. There's a couple of them that are actually like bone stimulants. There's a lot of them that obviously increase appetite, and then there's other ones that decrease appetite. So you can use that for some of it. And I mean, anti-nausea, things that have to do with your stomach, things that have to do with a lot of emotions that come up. You know, that anxiety is a big one that a lot of people talk about, but also chronic pain from surgeries. You know, like if you've had back surgery or knee surgery or hip replacements, there's all that type of stuff that comes into it. But I mean, that was how it worked
That's
first.
amazing.
Like, California was like medical, Colorado was medical, Washington was medical. And then once they started to see how many people were purchasing it, then there's a whole different talk about, taxation and regulation and everything else on what it gets to be. When you get recreational, that's, a term for 21 and up, just like they do with alcohol. But there's also, a whole different thing about the cannabis plant is the terpenes, which is, how it smells and how it tastes.
I heard you say that. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
so
what a
like,
terpene means.
Yeah, so terpene is it's not the same thing as like what would be considered a flavonoid, which is more about flavor. But terpenes are found in the cannabis plant, just like they're found in things all over the world already. So like when you have a mango and you eat the mango, there's a terpene called myrcene. That same myrcene terpene is also found in cannabis, which is linked to like when people talk about indica and sativa, and if it's a heavy high or if it's a daytime high, the more myrcene in a plant, the heavier that effect seems to be. And then you get into things like linalool, which is the same thing that's in lavender. And there's a bunch of other, crazy words like what's in black pepper, which also helps people come down off being too high or too affected. Limonene is the same thing that's found in lemons and in a lot of citrus. Wow. So you can get in and kind of, a certain combination of cannabinoids and a certain combination of terpenes is what actually make that effect happen when you inhale it or ingest it or etc.
Crazy, man. So they are able to pinpoint whatever feeling you want, basically. Pretty scientifically. Much, yeah. Like, oh, you're tired all the time, smoke this, or you need to sleep, you smoke this and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. And I mean, that conversation happens with a bud tender somewhere in a dispensary usually, and it's more about what's actually available on the shelves. But it is true that, depending on what the issue is, there's most likely some sort of genetic or cannabis available. And a lot of that talk gets into the extracts because then your potency goes way up when it's extracted.
Yeah.
And as an example, like when you make cookies, you don't grind up a vanilla branch and put it in the cookies. You do 2 drops of vanilla extract. Same thought with cannabis. Like, if you have some issues that flower doesn't help with, you get into the extracts, and that's, a higher potency, probably a smaller dose. Some people use it in a vape pen, some people do it on a rig. And any way that you're smoking the extracts, that kind of leads to that tolerance going up, but also that's where like that chronic pain disappears or the appetite stimulation will come back. And there's a lot of people with Crohn's and certain ailments that you use those extracts. Not only does it stop the IBS and the Crohn's, but it also helps them be able to eat.
Wow. So do you see a lot of positivity in legalizing weed in Colorado and states like that, as far as like the public? And is it people like, the reefer madness scene where everyone's going to go crazy and everyone's going to be stoned and wreck their cars and rape people? It's like, that whole spiel that they made up to make it illegal and stuff. Does it seem like positive over there? Because I haven't been to a state yet where weed was legal, so I never got the vibe of being around in that area. Yeah, what it feels like to be in that area.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think one to answer the question, I think the stigma of cannabis is definitely different. I live in Denver. There's more dispensaries here than McDonald's and Starbucks combined.
Oh, so, shit.
I mean, there's, literally hundreds, over 500 different dispensaries in Denver. You can't drive down the street without seeing a green cross or a pot leaf or whatever. I also know that, through my journeys for 20 something years, I may meet somebody that doesn't think that it should happen, but within their network or family, there's somebody that it's helped. So, my cousin had cancer and he was smoking it and it definitely helped his quality of life. Or my mother had back surgery and couldn't walk, and then she was using cannabis and now she can drive her car and go get groceries. Wow. So, there's kind of like this circle of influence thing. I've been involved with hundreds and thousands of patients in different aspects. So I'm part of a group that has a dispensary in Arkansas outside of Little Rock. And sometimes in the southern states, it's a different conversation than the West Coast or the East Coast. Yeah. And I also do a lot of work in the state of Maine, which is a great state and a lot of cultivation that goes on. And they have a plethora of products that are involved. But there are some people that choose not to use it. But I don't think even the people that don't use it, they understand that it's helping others.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest part of it.
That's what pisses me off. Like, I don't use it. I don't know if I would. I used to. I smoked
Right.
weed for like 10 plus years and I
Mhm.
enjoyed it. And I don't understand why they would not let it out if they know other states are doing it. It's not
Right.
causing chaos, and in fact, it's helping people. It's generating tax money for the states.
Right. A lot of money.
A lot of money. I mean, probably in the millions for sure.
Oh yeah.
And what the hell? What's the deal? Like, like you said, in the southern states, like we're conservatives. All that
Mhm.
shit. And I am a conservative, and but at the same time, I'm like, what the hell? I don't care. Legalize weed. Like
Right.
that's not a one party. That's like bull crap. Like everyone
No,
should
and
be
yeah,
able to access to
it's
the plant.
across, yeah, all of the political things. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody's into it. I mean, I think right now with what's happening, we're gonna get, if we're not at 40 of the states already, we're getting close to it. I know that South Dakota just went through some stuff, and Virginia and different aspects, and obviously like Florida and Arkansas, and then also Mississippi is a talk about it. Oklahoma is pretty much a free for all, and
Damn.
they enjoy it, which is right
Yeah.
next
What
to
the
Texas.
hell? I know.
So
I think, and unfortunately, Texas is probably going to be like the very last state that
I would say, so I have a couple bets with colleagues, but Kansas and Texas are the two biggest states that everybody thinks went. Like Utah already went, which was a big turning point.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, there's a lot of talk about Kansas and Texas probably being one of those two being the last one.
The last damn holdout. I guarantee it's going to be Texas, man. Put your money on Texas. There's a lot of sticklers around here, man, and like I don't think it's, oh man, it's not bad. Like we smoked weed. We were just like laughing and listening to Pink Floyd and
Right.
having a good time, It was freaking great. And like, I don't understand that. Like, why are they doing that to us? They can give us pharmaceutical pills. Oh shit, yeah, they can. They
Okay.
can
Yeah. Of
give you
course.
Xanax. They'll give you Xanax all day long. They'll give you opioids that could kill you if you took too many, and that's completely legal. But if you want to eat a little gummy bear that makes you feel relaxed, that's illegal.
Right.
It's just asinine, man.
It's also, I mean, it comes into a lot of it that they're, originally it was California, Colorado, and Washington, and it was seen as like this West Coast pretty liberal aspect.
Yeah.
I think the dollars that the states make definitely change some of it. I also think it's, the lobbying and what happens in those states and how it works its way through. I was born and raised in Missouri, and Missouri just, had some dispensaries and a whole industry that opened. And when you get into different conversations about that, the jobs that open up, the tax revenue that comes in,
Yeah.
the fact that there's not people driving across state lines, in northern Texas, there's a lot of people that visit Oklahoma often because they're buying stuff, and
for sure.
it's not supposed to go across state lines, but that doesn't really stop them as much.
Yeah.
And I think also, where you're at in Corpus Christi is different too, because the border being right there is a whole different topic, which it's interesting to see it. Like since I started and I was in California and then moved to Colorado, I've watched kind of this, green wash across the country in different aspects, and I've been involved in a bunch of it. And I think as of right now, I've either worked in or been involved in like 15 of the different states. So it's an interesting situation to see it happen, and it's also it's different when all of a sudden there's $50 million in tax revenue coming in for a state, and you see things like Oklahoma and South Dakota, and certain states are doing that because there's not a lot of population and there's not a lot of ways for them to make extra money. You get into some other states and they feel like they have plenty of capital funds right now, so maybe that's not the thing they want to do.
Do you think that me being so close to the border has something to do with why Texas won't turn? Is because there's some illegal stuff going on between maybe politicians or the politicians in Mexico? There's just some weird. It's too easy to get it in Corpus or Texas because the weed comes over the border, so they can't control it. Maybe
I think from what I understand, Florida doesn't count because it's water, but Texas has the largest stretch of border with Mexico. California has ridiculous. A stretch. It's not as long. So maybe that's a part of it. I think it's also part of it being in the South and also just being such a large state. Obviously having a program and regulations and things that everybody in Texas has to follow, plus every small local jurisdiction coming up with their own regulations.
Right.
I think that's part of probably what the holdout is. I don't know about Mexican weed and the illegal part of it. I hate to say it because I have a lot of friends that live in Mexico, but their weed doesn't have the quality that, the
Hell
US
no,
weed
it don't.
does.
Yeah. We're better
You
at
can see
everything.
that. You can see that scrolling through social media any way you want
Yeah,
to look at it.
for
But
sure, man.
yeah, the quality and quantity is vastly different.
For sure. Are seeds legal?
So
Can
technically,
could you
yes.
send me seeds through the
So
mail?
seeds don't possess any THC. So there's a lot of talk about the technical part of it. Yes, it is a cannabis seed. As long as it's not germinated, it's probably not going to be considered illegal.
What does
Once
that
it's
mean?
germinated,
What does that
so
mean?
once you sprout it, so once it
Oh,
goes
okay.
from being a seed in your hand to being in the
So like a
ground,
little bean sprout or something.
yeah, a little bean sprout comes up,
Yeah.
then it's considered illegal. So I mean, many companies ship seeds all over the country and all over the world. So the seed aspect isn't the hard part because the seed has no cannabinoids or anything in it. It's just like a tomato seed.
Could I get on the internet and buy seeds right now? And
Oh,
ship it
for
to
sure.
Texas?
Yeah.
Really?
I think if
Oh.
you typed in cannabis seeds in Google, you'd probably see thousands of different pages.
Do you sell seeds?
So I don't sell them anymore. We put them in facilities that we work with. So when we open up or work with a customer in a certain state, our genetics go into that building. And I mean, I give away a lot of seeds. Whenever I travel, I bring some seeds with me and hand them out to people. But I mean, there's thousands of different seed companies in the US that do sell their seeds. And it's a variety of different costs. Some people are at $2 or $3 a seed. Some people get all the way up to $50, $60 a seed.
One seed?
Well, yeah, and it's usually a 10-pack. So like,
oh, okay. So 10 little seeds.
Yeah, 10 seeds at $10 is $100. If you go $20 a seed for 10 is $200. I definitely know of some seed packs that were of some pretty exclusive genetics that have sold for $500 or more. So it's a different part of that whole cannabis world.
Yeah,
is the seed. And I mean, I would assume like in our vaults we keep a plethora, probably like 20 or 30 different genetics at 50 to 60, maybe even 100 seeds of each genetic. And then as you want to germinate and bring those genetics out and make them available,
yeah, you already know what you got.
You kind of have a library to work from.
Yeah. Do you have to keep seeds at a certain temperature?
No, they sit at room temperature. I mean, people get into different ways how to keep them. I've always kept mine at room temperature. They've always sprouted. Soak them in water overnight. They sprout. Then you can throw them into the dirt. I will say that the biggest misconception is you got to bury a seed super small, and actually, it's 2 lengths of the seed is how deep you want it.
Really?
Yeah. So like for a cannabis seed, you're talking about like 6 or 7 millimeters is where you want it below the surface. Yeah.
Wow. Is there a certain type of soil that you're supposed to use for that stuff?
So it depends. Some people use normal soil like dirt, which you can buy at a hydroponic store. Other people like cocoa. Where you're at in Corpus Christi, you're kind of at sea level. So there's a lot of humidity. Here in Colorado, where I live, it's super dry. So we use something like cocoa that will retain some moisture and not dry out so fast. And then other people get into hydroponics, which means that the roots are actually in water or around water. There's aeroponics, there's deep water culture, which is like spraying and kind of having like a pool of water that it sits in. What? So there's a variety of different ways that you can grow them. If you're starting out, you've never done it before.
Yeah,
I would tell you to go down to your local hydroponics store, make a relationship, buy a bag of soil, see how that goes. You can literally sprout them in like a solo cup, and they'll stay in that for quite some time before they need to go to a bigger pot. You can put them in the windowsill as long as the sun's out and it's not too cold, or you can get into grow lights and all kinds of other equipment that people buy to do it.
If you get some really good seeds and you just plant them in the ground,
right?
Will they produce?
So they'll produce on their own as long as it's, like if you kind of did like some chicken scratch on the ground and just mixed up a little bit of soil and put them in there, they'll grow. To see what you see in a dispensary or from an actual cultivator of quality, you'd be wanting to feed it nutrients and you'd be giving it other things that it would need to get bigger. But technically, yes, like the plant will grow. The biggest question would be is if it will finish or it will mature by the time your grow season's over. So you're in Texas, you have a very long grow season. When people talk about the harvest moon and etc., it takes 12 hours of darkness for a cannabis plant to kick into flower, to start making buds. So if you grow it and you never give it 12 hours of darkness, it just continues to grow like a weed and just gets taller and taller and taller. It never actually blooms.
Wow.
But when you give it 12 hours of darkness for at least 60 days, a lot of people like to do 90 or 120 or whatever. That darkness cycle is what makes it bloom and makes it produce the bud. And it needs to be literally, I mean, like the sun does it on its own. But when you're indoor, most people are using a timer. Turns off every night at 7 p.m., turns on every day at 7 a.m. And that cycle of darkness is what makes it bloom.
That is so awesome, man.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Like, I remember in high school, someone said they had a plant. I'm like, no freaking way you had a plant. And like, they would have like a mail, and we're like, what the hell is this? We can't smoke this. And like,
all those seeds going around in all those bags, there's plenty of ways to
I know, man. So much freaking weed full of seeds. That would piss me off. And then they'd sell you like a blunt with barely any weed in it, and then it'd be popping because they freaking put seeds in that thing.
Yeah. Can
you get high off of stems?
I mean, there's probably, one shameless plug for the Gemma-Cert Pro or Light. You could obviously test it and see if there's any THC on a stem. I'm going to tell you that probably not. Most of the plant's power is pushing those cannabinoids and producing those blooms. So it's more of like the fruit part. Same way as like, you really don't get anything out of eating the stem on an apple or the rind or the peel of the banana.
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, if you put enough stems in a little keef catcher or a shaker or something and shake it around, the keef will come off. I assume that'll probably do something.
Because we sure as hell tried. We tried to smoke freaking stems so many times. We were like, oh my God, we have no weed. It was like, I got these stems, and we just crumble them up and try to smoke them.
Right.
I
mean, they will burn. I don't know if they get you out.
It was like a placebo. We're like, I think I'm high. Are you high? Yeah, I think so. Man, dude, I don't know what would happen if I smoked weed now. Like, it's been so long.
I mean, the weed's definitely probably more potent than what you were used to. So it's, one drag off a joint, maybe not even you and the concentrates of the other stuff, a couple gummies here or there. And some people even like we get into it and we're like, buy the gummies, but cut the gummies in half or cut them in quarters and start to figure out what your dose is. I think that there's probably some of it is also mental. A lot of people kind of psych themselves out.
For sure. That's true.
Be in a good place, be relaxed and take a drag off a joint and see what happens. But I would tell you to record that because that may be some good content for you.
I know, right? Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So in Colorado, like say you work in the oil field, can you smoke weed even though it's 100% legal in the state?
So I think well, it comes down to more of the company rules, right? Like if you work for a certain company and they don't allow it, it's one thing. I will say in regards to oil fields and truckers and certain professions,
probably not, right?
Some of those guys, if there's an incident or an accident, they get drug tested and then they're going to fail.
That's the thing.
Some people will probably say, I don't have any incidents or accidents, or I'm not going to get in trouble. So they do. There are a lot of jobs, not in that realm, not in the oil and gas or trucking, but there's a lot of jobs out here in Colorado. They're not drug testing for anything, but if there's an incident that happens, then, they usually have to ask or see what's going on. So, I mean, it's legal in the state. That doesn't mean that your employer necessarily. Now, I will say that, if you're working at a dispensary or cultivation facility, other places, I would be surprised if you don't fail a drug test because it's kind of hard.
Yeah, that one for sure. Man, that you got an awesome job, dude. Like, do you eat edibles every day?
No, not every day. I have 2 kids that are under 3 and married.
Oh,
I turned 41 this month, so it's a little bit different. It's not the same as it used to be. I mean, I used to be multiple times a day, every day, no matter what. I think from like 16 to 37, I probably smoked more cannabis than most people could even put in a room.
Oh, for sure, dude. I believe
but yeah,
that.
I mean, the job is great. I love working in aspects that help out people that are cultivating. And with Gemma-Cert, a lot of it is, we do a lot of knowledge and education. Plus, we have a device that helps out. And in realms of like helping out clients and people in different states, we train their people to work better for the company, which is always better for the ownership or whoever's involved. So, I mean, I mean, it wasn't initially, I didn't go like 100% into cannabis and worked many different things over many different years. And then eventually kind of kept stepping it up. And after running a regulated testing lab and owning and running dispensaries and now getting to this point, it's interesting to see all the different stuff, but I definitely don't have any dull days. I don't hate what I do.
Yeah.
And I think that's also something that a lot of people like about the cannabis industry. If you're really passionate about cannabis,
Yeah.
there could be a job somewhere. It's not like it's different than other industries, though. You still got to start at the bottom.
Oh,
and
for
work
sure. It's
your way
still a
up,
job. Yeah, it's still a job.
Yeah. You still
So
gotta
how
pay
does
bills and show up.
Mhm. So how does it smell in that room? Like that picture that you took? What does it smell like in there? Like
So
just for someone that would never be able to
I
go
got
in
you.
one of
Yeah,
them.
yeah. So in a flowering room in a cultivation facility, most of the time there's different genetics in the room. So we got 20 of these and 20 of those and
Yeah.
20 of these and 20 of those.
Yeah.
The room itself is going to be 78 degrees. There's a lot of
Mm.
airflow. The
Mhm.
more that there's air moving and the more the plants are moving,
Right.
that transpiration, like the little mouths underneath the leaves, eat up more oxygen and eat up CO2 and
Wow.
oxygen and how it works. So they're
Mhm.
intaking CO2 and expelling oxygen. So the more that that plant moves and kind of gyrates, the more it's taking that in and the stronger the plant gets.
Mhm.
Also, the stronger the branches get, which is a good thing. You kind of want to think about it as like a workout for a person. If your plant
Mhm.
never moves and it's always staying still, it's kind of
No,
floppy
that makes
because there's
sense.
no rigidity in it.
That makes sense.
So 78 degrees, a lot of airflow. Most likely at some point while you're in there, there's going to be some sort of feed happening. Somebody's either pouring water on the base of the plant or there's an automatic system that does it. And the smell, I would say, is kind of like what I would consider like live vegetation. Like when you're
Mm.
in nature and you
Mhm.
can smell kind of things around you. It's one way. It doesn't smell like finished weed because it's still wet and it's still live on the plant.
Really?
But I mean, if you bump into it and rub a plant and smell
Mhm.
it, it'll smell just like that genetic and what it will smell like: sour diesel,
Yeah.
cookies, kush, whatever you want to call it. But that's kind of different sections of the room because you're
Mhm.
working with
Right.
different genetics in the room, and it usually, to me, there's a certain humidity in that room that you want to have no matter where you're at in the world.
Mhm.
You can feel a little bit of moisture. You can feel the heat. If you're directly in a light, it's going to be a little bit hotter than if you're in the shade of the plant. But that week 6 to week 9 of the flowering cycle is the favorite for everybody. That's when the plant's finishing. It's when it smells the most robust. That's when the colors really kind of kick in on what it's going to look like when it's
Yeah.
finished. I mean, the best day is cutting the plants down and harvesting them, but the weeks
Yeah.
leading up to that. And for me, like what you're talking about, the smell in the room, like
Mhm.
first time I walk into any room, I can kind of tell if the humidity's right, if the temperature's right, if the
Yeah, that's
smell's
cool.
right.
Yeah.
And you can also kind of see stuff like if there's water puddled up somewhere on the table or on the floor, that's a bad sign because you kind of want everything to be clean and you don't
Mhm.
want any stagnant water because then that
For
would
sure.
breed some sort of mold. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that picture is one of many. On my Instagram account,
Yeah, I'm gonna check
whenever
that
I'm
out.
around a facility, I post some pictures. But that one that you saw
Yeah.
was a good one. So
Do you have a Twitter?
I do not have Twitter, but I do have
Okay.
Instagram, and I don't have Facebook either.
I don't
But
either.
if you go to Grimy Gatsby on Instagram, that'll bring up my account and everything else.
Okay, cool. I don't want to keep you too long, John. Thank you, man. This is an awesome conversation, man. I think that's so cool. You get to do that, and just hearing about the technical parts
Yeah,
of all that is totally fascinating to me because I
I
love
feel this like
science.
when I talk to a chef,
Mhm.
I feel the same way. Like when I have friends of mine that are really big into food, and it's like how you're basting this or how you make
Yeah, yeah.
that. There's always a way on why that food tastes great when it hits the table, and in
Mhm.
the cannabis realm, it's the same way. So that's what it is. I also will say, obviously, go to the Gemasert Instagram. They also have Twitter. If you guys have anything that you guys want questions about that, obviously reach out. That's what I do all the time. But
Yeah,
I
plug
love talking
away,
about
man.
weed.
Yeah, plug away. Is that do you have a website or anything like that, or?
So Gemasert.com would be the one to check out the devices, the GC Lite and the GC Pro. If you just hit the website or ask anything, you can get to me directly. You can
Mhm.
talk with the team. we can handle any of the questions you want to talk about with, testing and different aspects on it. And then, for myself, the easiest way to usually do it is just through Instagram.
Mhm.
I'm on that thing daily, kind of helping out different brands. But Grimy Gatsby is GrimeyGatsby. And that'll bring up stuff. You can DM me, reach out, say whatever. If you're ever around Denver, drop me a line and we can take you on a little tour.
Awesome, man. My sister's actually in Colorado right now.
Nice.
Yeah. Is it snowing over there?
So right now, tonight, it's snowing in the mountains finally, but it was 60 and sunny here in Denver today. So that's never a good
really?
sign.
That's not a good sign?
Nah, we all like snow here.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I've been to Denver once. It's freaking beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Like Texas is nothing but like rolling hills and just like
Yeah.
weeds, and it's nice. Texas is awesome. I love Texas. But Denver's totally different. Like
Yeah,
I remember the first
up and down and all around.
Yeah, I saw a mountain. I was like, "Holy crap!" Like,
Yeah.
because you see mountains in Texas. They're not freaking mountains. They're like hills. Like I thought that was a mountain. And then when I saw
I come from a cattle ranch in Missouri, so it's like in Texas. Whenever I'm there, I'm like, is this all one ranch or is this a bunch of different? Like it's all like fences and whatever. And you see a little peak here or there, and it's maybe 200-300 feet. You come out here to Colorado, and you're talking about 14,000 feet.
Unbelievable, man.
Yeah,
gorgeous. So one more question, man. What is the holy grail of weed strains?
It's a good question, and I think it comes down to people's taste, right? There's a lot of people that like people like purple stuff and grape stuff, and they're gonna say something which would probably be like the Grape Bubba or Granddaddy Perps. And then you get into stuff that's like a sour or a diesel and that gas, and people get into certain conversations about that. For me personally, there was a strain called Kevorkian after the doctor back in the day, and that stuff was the heaviest and craziest smoke that I had ever seen. And that was probably like 2003, 2004. And even to this day, when I see people, I'm always like, have you heard about it, or do you know where any of it was? It came from the Humboldt University area, and it was some amazing smoke. But for myself now, I look into a lot of other stuff. Like, there's a lemon G strain that's just got an unbelievable scent and flavor to it. And it's pretty much like smoking like a lemon candy. And then you get into other stuff, which is like Rude Boy OG, which is from Archive Seed Bank. That's like a real heavy type of kush and like a mothball type of feeling to it or taste to it. So, I think the holy grail for each person is somewhat different.
That's true. That's a good point. Since there's
I
different.
do think that, no matter who you talk to, they have what their favorite is and what their favorite was, and kind of like how you work through it. And I tell a lot of people, it's kind of like, beef and meat and smoking or whatever. Like I love eating bison and elk. You always can't get it. So,
awesome.
A good fillet or something else is always nice too. But the holy grail for me, which I have still searched for however, almost going on 20 years, was that Kevorkian strain. Was just super sedated, super high. I mean, you'd smoke a little bit of it and be Velcroed to the couch for 6 hours.
Damn. So that was the most hardcore one, the Kevorkian,
which I've never seen again and never come across again.
Like when you say more hardcore, like you were just super, super stoned, like all the above, hungry.
And and for people out there listening, I don't look for like daytime smoke or uppers or anything like that. For me, I have issues sleeping. So things that are sedative and help me go to sleep is something, things that keep me out of, some OCD type A personality stuff helps out as well. So that's what I look for personally, which is what that strain was about. I mean, you'd smoke it and sit there and stare at the ceiling for a couple hours and not even remember what you were doing.
Yeah, and that's what you needed, right? For some people, they need something else, and some people, that's freaking awesome. One more question: what's your favorite music to listen to when you're stoned?
Man, so a couple weeks ago, I cut off like almost 3 feet of hair. So I am a long-haired.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have no hair.
I'm growing my hair. I've been bald for like 10 years. I'm like, screw this. I'm growing my hair out.
I grew my hair for 5 years, and as a present for my wife this December, she cut it all off a week or so ago. So I listen to a lot of Dead. The Grateful Dead has always been something I've listened to since a kid because of my parents. Every morning we start the day with some reggae. Seems to always put myself and my kids in a good place if you got a little bass line and some reggae going.
Yeah, some Revolution, stuff like that. Revolution.
Some of the newer stuff, some of the older stuff, Buju Banton, Sprague Benz, Bob Marley,
Sure.
Anything that's got that true kind of reggae bass line seems to be good in the mornings.
Hell yeah.
And I myself listen to a lot of different stuff. My wife really likes kind of pop music and alternative and different things like that.
Yeah.
So if it was my personal choice, it would probably be either some reggae, the Grateful Dead, or probably some old bluegrass is always nice too. If you're staring out at the mountains, something like that helps out.
Do you ever do Pink Floyd?
I do actually do Pink Floyd. I have the vinyl that we play every now and then. When you brought it up earlier, I was laughing. My most of my brothers-in-laws are very big music people, so it's always about going record for record. But Pink Floyd, amazing if you watch. I will say, if you get high and you actually watch some of the videos and the old stuff while they were playing it,
dude.
All of it's great music for sure. But I mean, older stuff is Allman Brothers Band, Pink Floyd.
Allman Brothers for sure.
All that stuff.
They're good. ZZ Top, all that stuff. All right, John. Thank you, man. Yep. That was a blast. Yeah. Want to do one more plug? The website one more time in the.
I'll go through the list of them. So for Gemacert, if you want to go to gemacert.com, that'll handle all the different mobile testing aspects. We can test cannabis or hemp. If you're in the state of Arkansas, in Conway, Arkansas, we have Harvest Cannabis Dispensary, which is a medical dispensary. Out in Maine, in Portland, Maine, we have Alternative Essence, which is a dispensary. Iron Lung and Refined Labs, which are cultivation and extraction companies. And then in Missouri, if you want to go by north, that's outside of St. Louis. We have 2 dispensaries there. What else can I tell you? My Instagram is Grimy Gatsby if you want to hit me up. If anybody listening is a fly fisherman as well, we have Moccasin Fly Club, which is a whole different brand that we make clothing for fly fishing, which is a big part of it. But that's kind of the all of the brands and everything involved.
All right, John. Awesome, man. I hope people find you. Thank you for sharing your time with me. That was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot about weed today.
Hell yeah,
and it's awesome, man. Thank you. You're doing the Lord's work. Thank you, man, for keep doing that kind of work, man. We need people like you to spread the good word.
Anytime, if you guys want to talk later on, or
for sure,
something comes up months from now, if you want to get back on and talk about more stuff, let me know.
Hell yeah, John. All right, man. Thank you, man. Have a good night. Have a good Christmas.
See you. Bye.